Hello, welcome to session 16, where we will talk about what I have not been suggesting as a solution. You'll notice that I have not suggested that you write to your congressional representatives or your senators. Although they've been known to make changes if massive numbers of their constituency make enough of a fuss that cause them to not want to take the risk of not being reelected. There are from time to time a few politicians or those from the ranks of political activists who stand out as brilliant exceptions. Sadly, as few of these as there are, they generally don't last very long. If they seek the kind of changes that are really needed and they're at all effective, they become potentially dangerous to the status quo, and they're then often ridiculed, scandalized, or in some other way discredited in an attempt to make them ineffective. If everything else fails, something worse may be done in order to neutralize them as a serious threat. Most of the time, however, it's difficult for average politicians to be a part of the solution when they are so very busy being part of the problem. I'm saying that the people of this nation who want change and who see the need for change should come together. There can be great strength in coming together, even if it is only at the voting booth. And I'm not necessarily suggesting that it must be limited to that. There's great power in nonviolent dissent. Both Gandhi and Dr. King have shown us proof of that. If you're not capable of nonviolent dissent, then you should stay home, because you simply provide the excuse needed to turn people away from your cause, and an excuse for those in power to characterize all who disagree with them as being violent lawbreakers, and those who want to destroy property, or worse yet, destroy the country. There's great political power in coming together, but you must be certain that your gathering is nonviolent and that your goals and your agenda are not selfish ones, but they're for the good of the country, and even more so for the good of all of the people. No such gathering should be carrying signs that demean or mischaracterize the opposition. The truth will be enough. If we deviate from these high principles, then the chances are increased that no change will be brought about, and that those maintaining the status quo will continue to do so by the same methods as before. It would not be beneath them to hire people to join a crowd of dissenters with the purpose of damaging property or committing other acts of violence that would discredit the dissenting crowd and the movement as a whole. Unlike most dissent in this country, such events of violence, planned and carried out in order to discredit legitimate dissent, would then receive significant and repeated news coverage. They'd be showing it every few minutes. Trust me. They normally don't do that if it's non-violent and peaceful. But when it's violent, or if there's any violence at all, they want to be sure everybody sees it. One example of a technique that some politicians have used successfully is to tell the people that if we vote for them, they will, quote, get big government off our backs, end quote. Those are code words. They really mean to business and the corporate world, help us get elected, and we will sponsor legislation that will deregulate everything that we can get away with deregulating, and that will help your bottom line because it will allow you, the corporate businessman, to conduct business in any old manner just as you will, with the premise that anything goes. This is the same kind of deregulation that brought about the worldwide financial collapse of 2008. And has caused millions of people to lose their jobs and or their homes. Yet many of those same people that lost their jobs and their homes, actually voted for the deregulating politicians then, and have once again in the 2010 elections put back into office and into majority power in the U.S. House of Representatives many of those same persons who instigated this calamity upon our country and its people. I suspect that unless these voters wake up, they'll probably do so again. How very sad that big money and big media can be so persuasive, and that some of the people can be so forgetful. I ask you again, why are so many of you still voting for these people? Why? We should all remember that many of the regulations that they want to weaken or even to do away with completely are the same kind of regulations that finally force business and the corporate world, as mentioned previously, to give working people a 40-hour week even. A minimum wage such as it is. Safe working conditions. Help with our life and health insurance. Time off for vacations. And a myriad of other benefits that were not given voluntarily. These things were brought about because the people insisted on them, and the courts finally insisted on them. And we're now seeing them being dismantled and taken away piece by piece at an increasing rate of speed. Don't allow yourself to be deceived by their divisive rhetoric and misrepresentation. As long as there's nothing to prevent them from doing so, many of the most wealthy, by continuing the disproportionately influential and detrimental practices that I have prescribed here and other similar measures, assure that those who are the wealthy elite, those who own or control a substantially disproportionate share of the industry, corporate structure, property, etc., continue to be the wealthy elite with their children and grandchildren succeeding them into perpetuity. They now have the gall to call those who disagree with them the elite in order to try to turn people against any dissenters, when in fact they, the ultra-wealthy, always have been and are still now the true elites, and they're working very hard to make certain that they remain so. I and others would call our society less and less of a democracy and more like an oligarchy, a society controlled by and for the sake of the wealthy elite, with the intent to make certain that there's no change to that status quo. Some might say that this sounds like another wild conspiracy theory, but in fact I'm not saying that there's some dark conspiracy at all. I'm saying that after so many years of doing these things that I've been describing, those in the top 2 or 3% of the wealthy who are continuing the practice have no need to sit down together and conspire about their next move. They know what they want and they know how to get it, because they know what works and what doesn't. So they, often through their representatives and agents, just keep doing what's worked in the past with an occasional innovation on someone's part to keep things moving in the direction that they want. However, if you truly do not believe that there are various groups of such high-level representatives of those very wealthy persons who do meet regularly or via the internet or otherwise on a national, state, and local level to plan strategy and to decide how to best carry out their plans, including any of the innovative ideas that they may have conceived, then you're either ill-informed or extremely naive if you believe that they're not doing this. If this sounds like a conspiracy to you, who knows, then maybe there is a conspiracy after all. That's not for me to say. Meanwhile, during the previous administration, about 1/2 of the country's population, with the dutiful help of the media, were satisfied, believing that everything was as it should be for the moment, and that those in power were doing all that anyone could do to make everything even better. Some of them didn't understand what was going on. Some of them didn't even know what was going on. Some of them didn't care what was going on. But a few of them both knew and understood what was going on, and they are still today, even after the new administration was elected in 2008, still passionately continuing to do everything that they can to make sure that the political environment continues to favor the wealthy and the corporate structure in which they, the wealthy, are so heavily invested. Begin now to open your eyes and pay attention to what's going on in this country and around the world. Start looking at what's being done more than what's being said. Become informed, then become involved. Become a leader of those who want the kind of change described here, or become a follower of such leaders, or get out of the way, because change is inevitable. And if it's not the kind of change described here, then this country and the world will not be a happy place for your children and your grandchildren. and their children and grandchildren. Thank you again for watching. And in the next session, number 17, we'll continue exploring this complex but very interesting subject. Thank you.